and we're here as part of the Dialogues in Art series, which is presented by the Department of Art and Art History at UT Arlington. And we have a lovely selection of panelists who will talk about their experience and insights about art and design and community. And Dennis, that's a nod to you, since you already added that in your slides. So we're thinking about these relationships, right, and these intersections between what we call art or design or visual expression or making or all of those things together, and the communities that they can impact, or the communities they're about, or the communities they can help. So without any further ado, we have a number of panelists. Many of us are part of the UT Arlington family, and then we have two folks joining us from outside of UTA. JC, who you see is already joined us, and then Paulina from the DMA will be joining us soon, fingers crossed. Hopefully she's not having technical difficulties. For today, I don't want to give any preamble because I want to hear all the amazing stuff that our panelists have worked on. So you get a sense of what we're going to be talking about, and we're going to be going in alphabetical order. And each panelist will discuss their work for about 8 to 10 minutes, introducing themselves and also their engagement with community as artists or makers or educators or all of the above. And then we'll have a time for Q&A at the end, hopefully about 30 minutes at the end, so that we can discuss a few prepared questions and then also allow the audience some time for their personal questions as well. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll welcome Dr. Lucy Bartholomew, who is an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Art and Art History at UTA. Virtual claps. And Lucy, please take it away. Do let me know whenever you'd like me to advance your slides.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the panel today. So I want to start off the program talking about creative places and the communities that make those places seem creative. Next slide, please. So there are some times and places in history that are famous for explosions of creativity, where innovations and game-changing inventions happened, and where many brand new creative achievements occurred, kind of many things in a close, short period of time. So there's a list here of some very famous ones, such as Florence in the 1400s, a revolutionary time we now call the Renaissance. Paris in the 1860s was a decade when Impressionism began, and in many ways modern art took hold. And then New Orleans at the turn of the 20th century, when people from all over the world came together, were living together in a community, and brought jazz music into existence. So thinking about a list like that, and there are many others that could be added, I think about why, like what are common factors that triggered this creative explosion? So I've listed some factors here. Competition, I think, is really important. When other experts are achieving new things that can inspire the next achievement and then the next achievement. The convergence of new ideas coming together, even drawing people together from elsewhere who are seeking to be creative in the same way. So in the example of New Orleans, it attracts creative people who want to be writers and musicians. They are still attracted to New Orleans because they are seeking to be more creative and in community with other people who are creative. And this also leads to collaboration, because when you have a lot of people around who share your passion, there's a greater chance that you'll decide to work together. And then that leads to more and more achievements. It's like a snowball effect. And these are things that wouldn't have happened if everybody had stayed apart and were not together in community. And I also want to say that creativity, it's by nature elusive. There's no perfect formula that will manufacture authentic innovation. So you could have all these factors in place and it still might not trigger a big creative revolution, or it might, right? So I find these things to be very interesting to think about. Next slide, please. So over the last 10 years ago, I've also been thinking about these questions, and I've done a lot of research in New Orleans in particular as a site, a community of abundant creativity. And so I've been thinking about like this aura of creativity, like an atmosphere where creative things have been happening or are happening, and what are the qualities of that? And so I also want to add here that what is a creative place is going to be different for different people. And that can also depend on like the domain of your practice. So an engineer, an actor, and an artist, they're going to be inspired by different kinds of places or inspired in different ways in the same place. And that's good. I think diversity is wonderful, and different kinds of creativity, like we need all those different kinds of creativity in the world. So it's just like this is another factor and another way that you can't just nail down, like that formula. But here are some factors that seem to be consistent. If creativity has happened in a place before, especially if it's in your field, then that can be inspiring to you. I think this is why people are so interested in like the house of a famous writer or composer, because the magic happened there. When you go into that place and you feel something different about being so close to that moment. I think also if you have been creative in a place before, then that can be very inspiring. The artist studio certainly has the aura of creativity. This picture here is my studio, my home studio, where I lived for 14 years. I don't live there anymore. And so you can see like it's all full of like art and books and, and things I've written and things I've made for over 14 years. And when I had to pack it all up and move, I realized I'm losing my creative place. And that mattered to me. I did not expect to feel sad about that, but it happened. And then when I got to the new place, I had a perfectly nice room, but it didn't feel creative in there. And I realized like, I haven't been creative in here yet. It does not have that aura. And I realized like I needed to just get in there and just make some stuff so I could get the good mojo going or something. And I think about that in terms of like the art classroom, our studio spaces, and then the communities, the places where we want communities to come together and make something, and thinking about that aura, I think can be really meaningful and can really make a difference in your collaboration and your inclusiveness for the people who are coming together. So of course, you also want to have materials to be present, time and opportunity, some kind of inspiration, and that's going to be different for different people, and that's okay too. And then when other people are actively being creative together, I think that can be an important factor as well. Next slide. Thank you. So I was encouraged to talk about the phenomenology of creativity today. And so phenomenology is a branch of existential philosophy that focuses on the body's lived experience. It proposes that everything we know we learned through the body's apparatus. So your eyes and ears absorb language, your skin and hands collect data about how the world works. And the brain processes all of that, right? The brain maybe adds meaning to that, but it could not learn anything without the body. Okay, so this is what phenomenology is asserting in a very sort of basic description. So phenomenology is focused quite literally on reality and the body's experience. And there is a growing interest in it over the last several years, which I think is very interesting in our times, this interest in the philosophy of reality or embodied experience. So some aspects of that for our discussion today is the body's experience with and in the process of being creative. We sometimes call this like the flow, or like that experience of losing track of time while you're making something. So that has to do with this phenomenology of creativity that I'm talking about here. Your embodied encounter with created objects. So like going to the museum or seeing a piece of art that a friend made. Those things do something physiologically to our bodies also. It's mostly good stuff. That would be a great other panel discussion maybe. And then your body's interaction with other bodies that are being creative. And I think when you're bringing together a community who might not be used to making art at all, or making art around other people, or making art in this way, then having other people who are making art around them kind of gives them permission to participate. And so I think that's really important. Next slide. So I'll end my portion today with a few images from an event I conducted in Fort Worth several years ago. I called it the Mentor Mural Project because if you give it a name, then it sounds very official. Basically, I brought together some art education students from TCU into a low-income middle school to collaborate on murals for some very plain and dreary walls in the school building. So the students in the art club at the middle school submitted proposals. They came up with the designs. The university students reviewed the designs and kind of made some selections before we got together. And then over 3 different evenings, we put the paintings up on the walls, all working together. Everybody was painting and drawing and working on it together. Next slide. So the TCU students were really being brought out of their comfort zone. They were excited about the service project. They were, I'm going to say the demographics in this class were mostly white, demonstrated quite a bit of privilege, like monetary privilege. And they actually, even though they were in an art ed class, they weren't actually education majors. They were taking this course for like their fine arts credit. But they were excited to do the project, and they considered it like a service project. And it really did bring them out of their comfort zones. There was one guy who said that he had never ever been in a public school in his life. And he had been taught that they were very dangerous and, like not good places. So it was a real eye opener for him to be around, I'm going to say, regular kids, and to see, kids that come from a very diverse background were still, perfectly wonderful. And the younger kids were very excited to, meet the older kids. They wanted to ask them questions about being in college and, kind of help each other on the project. And it was overall, I think, a really excellent experience for everybody. The school got some really nice artwork that's an asset to their building, and the kids all grew, in these different ways. And so I feel like it was really a nice, authentic, artistic and creative experience for them.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And I imagine that seeing those murals on the halls might encourage more creativity for those students as they walk through their high school life or their school life. So thank you so much. And we'll move from a school building with murals to perhaps producing some of those buildings with Dennis Chiesa, who is an assistant professor of architecture here at UTA in Kappa. So Dennis, please let me know as you'd like to advance the slides.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Next. Let's go to the next. Okay, so I have a lot of slides, so I'm gonna go really fast so I can at least say some words about each one. I'm going to talk a little bit about research in the design studio with our students, community engagement, community partnerships, and exhibitions as engagement, and then a couple of small projects that I call modest but funky. Next, research in the design studio. So through our studios here in the School of Architecture, I started working in the north side of Fort Worth a few years ago. And that's the community around the stockyards, and it's where I grew up. So it's somewhat unique here at UTA that I came to school here. I'm teaching here, and I am I grew up in Fort Worth. I'm originally from Central America, from Honduras, and so I spent most of my life at UTA in some way or another. And so to be able to use our design studios to conduct research in a neighborhood that I love, I think is a privilege that I much enjoyed. And over the years, we've continue to build on that work and try to engage with the community to do something that at least starts a conversation where people begin to empower themselves within their neighborhoods. Next. Our research, usually we look at it through some sort of lens. I've done a studio where we looked at it most recently in Polytechnic Heights in the southeast of Fort Worth. And currently we're looking at a neighborhood in Dallas as well. But we say, okay, what does the neighborhood look like from the public information that we can find, environmental conditions, physical conditions, economic conditions, social conditions. Next. In the north side, we must have skipped the line. Yeah, so there you go, back one. Maybe back one. There you go. Forward one. It looks like I'm missing one slide. Or okay, so we've looked at the boundaries. We've looked at mobility, safety, historical maps, redlinings, racial zoning, and all the other barriers and things that have been in the way for some of these communities to thrive. Next. Even political boundaries. Oh, so ecology, safety. So really trying to understand place from the data that students can find, usually in online or in books or different government websites. Next. And then they do analysis. So they produce drawings that look at these different topics. In this case, this is ecologies, and so looking at the landscape, the topography, even the figure ground of the neighborhood. This is still the north side of Fort Worth. Next. We look at, this was from 2 or 3 years ago, looking at what the safety was the topic for the students in a group of 3 or 4. And so they were looking at what the officers per capita for the different major cities in Texas, what the crime rates were for the different districts within Fort Worth, what the response rates were for priority 1 calls in the city, and trying to make sense of what that meant for neighborhoods that are, their biggest complaint when we spoke with them was, the police never come, the police take forever to get here, and so some of these diagrams are showing like how long. For example, a person would get away on foot by the time the police arrive when they were called for a priority 1 phone call, for example, and that's, basically someone's getting murdered, and it takes 9.5 minutes. And so we find out that Fort Worth happened to be, the worst out of all the cities. They're all terrible, but they were the worst one, even though they were in the middle in terms of police officers to citizen ratio. Next. And so then the students began to develop ideas of how to make the neighborhood safer. And so one thing about North Side is, the stockyards are in the North Side, and this is part of the history of North Fort Worth. But it really has always been disconnected from the community, and there's very little collaboration between the stockyards and the people that actually live there. And so the students were coming up with ideas of making some of these public spaces safer without necessarily bringing in more police or really centering the police as part of the design problem. So it had to do with sidewalks, public spaces that are that feel like they're safe, lighting, shade, and a few other things in the stockyards. Go ahead. Next. One group looked at the vacant land and they're always concerned about gentrification, displacement. Housing is a big topic in the last, now and over the last few years, and there are worries that the housing pressures are going to force people to eventually move out and be displaced. So we looked at the neighborhood and thought, okay, what's available here, and can there be some strategies that prioritize the neighborhood, the community, in terms of the vacant land and also the available lease space, and identifying which spaces and streets have actually continued to be vibrant over decades, despite the thinking of people from the outside of the neighborhood thinking that it's a depressed neighborhood. So there are actual local microeconomies within the city, and the north side is one of those, and there are quite a few others. A lot of them are cash economies, and so businesses are vibrant. They've been happening in this area for a long time, but they haven't actually been the new developments that are being built don't actually acknowledge those things. So the new developments are for people from the outside, not from people from within. So then the students began to make some of these connections and find opportunities to develop some of these streets and public spaces and make connections within the neighborhood. Next. And even analyzing how much available land and how much growth could be accommodated in the neighborhood in terms of density. So if having more density would be one mechanism to allow more people to be able to stay in the neighborhood as the city grows and more people move to the community, then how much can we actually fit in there? Next. And then eventually developing ideas for, watershed urbanism and some of the public spaces, what that could look like. That takes advantage of the cowboy culture, also the vaquero culture of the north side. So you have both the stockyards from the Anglo side and also the Hispanic, Mexican American side that is also in the north side. Next. And so the students, again, looking at public spaces that have not been maintained or have been overlooked and saying, okay, can we utilize this and reclaim it as public space? Next. Yeah, more of the same. Again, thinking about Marine Creek in North Side. Next. And so after that, I've done several studios, grad studios and upper class studios, fourth year and graduate studios. And so we have a website where we have some of the work up there. We've done different types of projects. We've looked at the site of the KKK building on 1012 Main Street and thought, okay, how can we think about this, not just as a building that could be reused for something that's good, but also think about the history of the site, the area that will become Panther Island was also home to McArt Park and also Frederick Douglass Park, and there were places where Juneteenth was celebrated in the 1800s. And so the placement of this KKK building is just one component, which was meant to intimidate people that were living, working in the north side and in the city. And so how can we think about that site in a different way, and that's really more about public space and a much broader urban design idea. And so we've done that exercise. We've looked at the stockyards and said, okay, not just the cowboy culture that we are taught to believe, that the history that we pretend that the stockyards were, and really think about it as what it was, which was an industrial place for labor, which was really not good for the environment, not good for people's health. And so can we think about the labor and the immigration that happened in this community and all the different cultures that came here because of the stockyards. And so we've done a labor museum, we've done housing, we've done public spaces. And so we have some of these, and throughout the process, we try to engage with some of the community members and people that live there so that they can give us feedback about the history and also just teach us what the history is. So next. So some of this work is we've exhibited it right now, the north side, which I call north of the island, sort of referencing Panther Island, which will be maybe the reference point for what happens around it. It's really ironic that they would develop this plan, this island as a way to connect the city, which an island isn't the first thing that one would think of when you're trying to connect the city, but that's what they're doing, and really becomes a real estate development project. And our concern is, what effect is that going to have on the communities adjacent to that, particularly the north side, maybe the river side on the other side. And so some of this work is right now, it's currently at the Architectural Biennale in Venice. Next. And again, this is the site of the KKK building. This project from one of the students looks at that site and it literally buries it and says, okay, let's create a new ground, and really pushes on the idea of who gets to reshape the ground or reshape the river and for what purpose. So in this case, it's more about creating public spaces, again, looking at the downtown, at the new canal, and also as a gateway to the north side and to the stockyards. And so our students, we've had several projects. The project for this one was to turn it into a civil rights museum and public, and bringing back Frederick Douglass Park in this part of the city. Next. Community engagement. Next. So we, part of what I really care about and I'm interested in as a designer and as a, trained in architecture, that I think people don't know what we do. So we have to go out there and get involved in our communities and let them get to see us, but also bringing them to our studio. So the photograph in the middle is some of the community members from the north side and our students having a conversation in our design studio. And I think it's important that they come and they see how we work, what we do, the types of drawings we make, the models that we do, the analysis, and have a conversation about cities, neighborhoods in our environment, right? And then we also go out and do that within the community, which is, I think, more common. But we also have pinups in the community. So these are a couple of pinups that we had in the Artes de la Rosa, the Rosemarine Theater in the north side, and an exhibition that we had of the work at the end of the semester, where we brought architects, designers, urban planners, faculty, students, people from the community, community members, to hang out, talk about the work, and have a conversation around housing. Next. Most recently last year working in the Polytechnic Heights community and with some of the neighborhood associations there, Texas Wesleyan University, United Fort Worth, the Justice Center there, and of course our students, and also interdisciplinary. This is work that we were doing. I was collaborating with a colleague of mine from landscape architecture, Dr. Juwan Im, and so we had landscape architecture students, and community members. And last year was different because of the pandemic. So conducting that on Zoom was much more difficult to get people to show up, but we gave it a shot, and now we're still thinking through how to improve on that. Next. But again, going out to the community, canvassing the neighborhood, a neighborhood that we don't belong to, and really listening to people from the neighborhood so that we get to understand what their neighborhood is and their history. They're the experts on this place. We just go there to try to learn, and then use our skills as designers to come up with ideas. Next. This is another project in the north side, looking at an old building in the neighborhood. This is where that Mariachi Mural is in the north side. If you've seen it, some of you may be familiar with Arnoldo Hurtado, who did this amazing community mural. And so the owners of this place have been trying to figure out what to do with this business that is no longer viable because the economy has changed, right? And so that's one project that our students took on. Next. Again, feedback from the community. So community engagement is learning from them. This was on through Zoom. What are the things that they want to see in their community? And so these are all comments that come from people from the neighborhood. Next. Same here, in Polytechnic Heights, what are the assets? We can drive and look and see and have some ideas, but really until you get the people that live there and tell you, no, these are the places that are important to us, you really don't know. Next. And the history, so we find out things that are online, great, and we write it down, and then our students go out and say, okay, neighbors come to our meetings and they tell us, no, actually this happened on this date, or this is when so and so moved in, and then we begin to populate the timeline as well. Next. Community partnerships. So in the Polytechnic Heights project, we work with Community Design Fort Worth, which is a nonprofit design center in Fort Worth. And next. We share the same goals and their mission, to enhance the quality of life in Fort Worth and Fort Worth communities by serving as a resource for community assistance, engaging the public in dialogue about key issues and opportunities, and undertaking long-term visioning in anticipation of future change. And so it's all in line with the things that we do at Kappa, and some of us really strongly believe in. So it was a natural fit for them to. They reached out to us about the project. Next. Because we, again, these are the types of issues that we care about, and we think that UTA, Kappa, we are in a great position in the heart of the Metroplex as the only accredited school of architecture, landscape architecture, and planning in the Metroplex, and so we need to be the ones that are actually dealing with these issues. Next. BC Workshop in Dallas, another design studio, community design studio in Dallas. I'm actually co-teaching with Lizzie McWillie this semester, a housing studio. So we've looked at housing in Fort Worth. Now we're doing housing in Dallas, and through a grant that our college and BC Workshop applied for and got, and so we're collaborating with them. So these community partnerships are great, and they're long term. They keep going, and we keep you leveraging each other to have some impactful work. Next. Exhibitions as engagement. So, the work after we finish, we want to exhibit it, and we want to bring people to talk about it, to have conversations, especially the neighbors and the people that belong to those communities. And so this was just a month and a half ago or so, an exhibition we had in Texas Wesleyan in one of the galleries next to Black Coffee, if you're familiar with the area, and at the heart of Polytechnic Heights. It really trying to encourage people to come and look at the work and tell us, hey, what do you think? What of this do you like or not like, and what do you want to champion for your neighborhood? Next. In the north side, same thing. We did a housing studio a couple of years ago, and we have an exhibition, Live It Up. We have our reviews up there and allow people and also some of their after school programs to come in and take a look at the work. And my hope is that people from the north side, where I went to school and where I grew up, are able to see architecture and things that hopefully inspire them to come and come to our school. Next. I chair Latinos in Architecture, which is LIA. It's a group within the American Institute of Architects, different chapters across the state and in other states as well. And we do exhibitions, juried exhibitions. Next. And over the last year or 2 years ago, we actually talked about the history. We've been around for now 11 years. Started in Dallas, and then it moved. We have a chapter in Austin, San Antonio, Fort Worth, San Francisco, Houston now, and then there's a different variations of this in DC and a few other cities. And so who are the people that are leading these efforts, right? And trying to make space for us to acknowledge to recognize the design work of a lot of other Latinos and see what everyone else is doing. And so next, as part of this in Fort Worth, our exhibitions are not, we try to go a little bit above and beyond. And since I've been chairing the Fort Worth chapter, I thought, well, since I will be participating in this one or competing, then I guess I'll try to design something for it. And so we started doing these installations next. Where we think about how do we exhibit the work and how do we talk about the people that are participating. And so this is again at Artes de la Rosa, and it stays up for a month or more, and people children hopefully come and look at the faces of the Latinos that are actually creating the built environment in the Metroplex, and they can hopefully there are people that they can identify with and then reach out to us, right? Next. We also give out awards for, honor awards for it's a juried exhibition, and then within that we give honor awards to about 2 or 3 of the entries. And this is built work, conceptual work, student work as well. And so we are open as much as possible. Next. Let's see, I know I'm taking forever here. And then this travel. So this was at the Texas Society of Architects convention in Galveston 2 years ago now. Then next we brought it, we redesigned it so that it wasn't suspended from the ceiling anymore. And then it was in downtown Dallas at the Center for Architecture in Dallas. And again, so the amount of traffic and the people that see this it increases, and we get more people talking about it. Next. And then so this is also Dallas next. And then back in Fort Worth at Artes de la Rosa. Next. And we, again, the last time we did this in person, we brought LIA chairs from across the chapters, and they gave a few, just like today, talk about their work or their chapters or what they're doing in their own chapters. And so it's great because we get senior or, some of the mentors that we've had, some of the great architects like Greg Ibanez here in Fort Worth, to come also be jurors and also speak and mingle with some of the young up and coming designers and architects. Next. And finally, Modest but Funky. Ultimately, for me, it's about the built environment, and one of the things that I'm really passionate about is how the Latino, the Hispanic influence in our built environment. Latinos basically built the DFW, and we are everywhere, and I had an exhibition a couple of months ago that I called House of Asterium that talks about the single family home and design and what people think about design and really the increasingly large, bigger homes that we see sprawling across most American cities. And this was a critique, but also some reflections to try to think about small homes that are affordable. Next, please. Next. Oh, I lost. Hello, next.
Are you seeing them advance or no?
No.
I'm moving. Oh, maybe.
I'm still on Jorge Luis Borges.
Billy, are you seeing them advance?
Yeah, I'm seeing them advance as you click. It's right now. Yeah, it's went from the model to the barn house drawing.
Okay. Can you try it again? One more. Okay, mine's not. I'm on 54. It looks like. Oh, am I able to advance?
No, see, it only that was the issue we ran into earlier. It only shows for you. Do you have a thing that says sync to presenter or something like that?
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Okay. Now I see. I don't know. So maybe I've been saying stuff that doesn't match what's on the screen.
No, you have.
Okay, back up one, so I can see where I'm at. Yeah. So we had an exhibition of these small homes. Next. And build models. We make stuff in our School of Architecture. We make drawings, models, and all of them were at 1/8 scale, so we could compare the sizes and the scale of these homes. Next, and these two projects, the barn house next, and the cube house, are two that are really dear to me because they're projects that I call 100% Latino, which every single person that stepped on the project and every single people that live there are Latinos, right? The people that commissioned it and me as a designer, Latino. And so they're very modest, 1,250 square foot for this one. The idea is how can we take these as prototypes and then bring them into an urban setting in the city to help alleviate some of the pressures on housing, right? Next. They're very simple. This is basically, a shotgun house, but how do you create interesting space at an affordable cost? And so this house we built for about $100 a square foot. Next. And then this one, which is kind of crazy, it's a 24-foot cube. It's 24 foot by 24 foot by 24 foot. And the owners wanted to live simpler, smaller, and they didn't have a lot of money. Basically, it cost $100,000 to build this. And I said, oh, we could do something. We could try. It's going to be small. And I thought, okay, can we do something that is on the footprint of a 2-car garage? Because every single family lot in most cities can fit a 2-car garage and has a 2-car garage. And could this be a prototype for accessory dwelling units? Again, how do we think about increasing density while still allowing people to be able to live in their communities? And so the 24-foot cube became an experiment in doing so. Next. And very simple. And also, then how do you also make interesting space so it doesn't just become this small, cluttered, small, tiny space? Next. It's a kind of a dumb box from the outside, but really when you go inside, it's next. It's when it feels kind of good. It has only 2 doors on the inside for 2 bathrooms. The rest of it is just open space that overlooks everything. And the idea is can we do something, again, $100,000 that has maybe more nuance in the way that it deals with light and really enriches the life of the people that live here, who are very modest immigrants from Mexico and just want to live a simple, and everybody wants to live in a nice home, but they were open to just experimenting and doing something cheap, and we thought, okay, let's try it. Next. And again, this is what the effects of light. Again, we were extremely happy with this, but mostly that it's to me, even though it's for a specific family, it's a prototype that we can then take and try to recreate in a different way in urban context. Next. Next. That's it. But I'll just say that the engagement, the people reaching out to me, because they've seen the work on exhibitions and the engagement and creating opportunities for average people to take advantage and to have access to design. It's really important that design isn't just something that is for people that are wealthy or people that we think might be able to afford it, that it should be for everyone. Thank you so much. Sorry I took forever.
Thank you, Dennis. No, and you were right on track with the slides as everything was going, except for that one little hiccup. And I think I'm with Billy, who, when she says we both want one of those dumb houses on our property. So thank you. And Dr. Vaccaro is all on board with burying the 1012 Main Street. So she mentioned that in the chat. So thank you so much. And we'll move swiftly on to one of our panelist who's coming in from outside of UT Arlington. She's joining us from the Dallas Museum of Art. We're so lucky to have her here. Her name is Paulina Dorsal Terminal, and she's going to talk about her work as the manager of community programs at the DMA. Please take it away.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I'm having computer issues all day, but it's so nice to be here, and I'm really excited to be, in dialogue with all of these great artists, community members, advocates, all of the above, professors, academics. So it's really, really good to be here. I have been working at the Dallas Museum of Art for the past, seems like 106 years, but it's been a year and a half. So I started working at the Dallas Museum of Art right at the beginning of lockdown. They had just sent out their, I think it was like around March 2020 when they were like, we're shutting down. Indefinitely. And that's when I started working in April. So the first 6 months, the museum was completely closed, and it was very interesting having my job as the manager of community programs when there was no community programs happening. So, that's kind of how my intro to Dallas, although I have been in Texas for a long time. I was raised, I was born in Mexico City, mostly raised in Houston, and then I went to school in Austin and was working at a different art museum there when I moved to Dallas. So yeah, I can go to the next slide. That also on the last slide was a picture of myself that I made as a student teacher with my cat, and you might see my cat. She might run through the screen. So that's just a little warning. So I work as the manager of community programs at the Dallas Museum of Art, and that is, has changed. What that means has changed over the past year, but essentially my position was created. We can go back still. Yeah, essentially, no, it's fine. Essentially, my position was created because this DMA is part of, it's part of the city of Dallas. Our building is part of the city of Dallas, although we are like a nonprofit separate. The city of Dallas created a cultural plan in 2018 that identified regions of the of Dallas, the Metroplex, that were underserved by the arts ecosystem of the arts district, right? So like, the DMAs and the arts district, but there's also like, the Dallas Theater and Symphony and all these other places. So my position was created specifically to address these areas that were underserved by the arts ecosystem. And what we would do is we would create programming, responsive programming with community partners already in those regions, and create programming together that would either allow more access to art programming in those areas, in those regions, or alternatively, it would bring community partners into the museum, so they could give expertise, consult about our museum, our programs, our exhibits, and then also just to have more diverse communities within the museum as well. So that's a lot. These are some images of the museum. We can go to the next slide. What that really means, right, is that the museum was, we have a lot of community organizations, community partners around, but really the only department that addresses that is education. And education works a lot with schools and tours, and that is like, already a million people's jobs. So they wanted to address specifically communities in the organizations, partners in the community, and basically everything outside of a school counts as a community partner. So that's rec centers, other organizations like community theaters, libraries, cultural centers, any kind of community organization really falls into this other. And then what we do is most of my work happened offsite before the pandemic. So it was responsive programming. It would either be, someone in, an organization in, I don't know, say Vickery Meadow would be like, we have an after school program that we're doing. Would you guys be interested in providing art services? And we'd be like, sure, but what does that mean to you? And so we come up with the program together. They'd be like, we serve, this kind of demographic, and our curriculum is focused on, social emotional learning. How can we make art fit into that? Or we serve a high population of immigrants, but they're from, Southeast Asia. So how can we make an art and language program that kind of allows youth to learn language through art? So it's all responsive, and it depends on the community partner as to what the specific program becomes. And I am not an expert on language and everything. I went to school. I got my BFA at the University of Texas at Austin in visual art studies and art history. So I was educated as an art educator. And so my role kind of is to really find and meet community artists who can, and they don't always have to be visual artists, right? Just people in the community who we can also contract to help us create these programs in the community. So like, I'm not, depending on the program, like I could hire like an art therapist, or I could hire an artist that's focused in storytelling, or that does that is from Southeast Asia, So I think that is kind of my role, to be a connector between these community partners and, artists that can do these programs in the community as well. So I'll just talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's on the screen. I said my work mostly happens off-site, but sometimes it also involves, doing programs at the museum. And also I've been talking a lot about my work with youth, but our work is multi-generational. So community partners are not always youth focused. Sometimes they're adult focused, sometimes they're senior focused, sometimes they're specific communities. So we work with veteran communities, we work with English language learning communities. So, it's multi-generational. But the group on the top left is a group from the University, UT Southwest, and they do an art of observation class with us, which was with their med students. So college students are a community, right? So that is a community group that we work with at several different universities. And so these are med students, and, med students are, they have to make quick judgments all the time when they see patients. But we do a class that's specifically about slow looking and deep looking at art. So really like the intersections of, art and medicine, or art and health. And then the group on the bottom, the group on the bottom left is a group of seniors in a senior living residence here in, they're in like the Fair Park area. And we did like an art and concert in the park in partnership with the Bishop Arts Theater Center. And yeah, so this was during the pandemic. So as you can see, the seniors it's done outside, everyone's got masks on. And then we also did like a big, we did like a Get Out and Vote festival with Beckley Sainer in Oak Cliff. And so this is like, we were giving out, masks that say vote. And we're also giving out art kits along with them. And then at the bottom right corner is from before the pandemic. That is a community listening session that we were doing. So we would do, right. So before the pandemic, our work was really guided by community listening sessions. So we would have our teaching artists and ourselves would go to we were doing this partnership with DPL, Dallas Public Library site. So we'd go to different libraries in these regions that were defined by the Dallas Cultural Plan. And we would just do like a month long at each library. And every weekend we would do workshops we would also survey guests that came to that workshop, as in like, what more do you want to see from us? Or like, what are y'all interested in learning about? Or what kind of art are you interested in making? And then those community listening sessions would then inform the programs that we did over the summer, which were our big citywide youth art workshops. So that's one of our awesome artists. I think, I don't know if she's on the call right now, but Marcela Reyes, who connected me to y'all. She's a professor at UT Arlington. She's one of our teaching artists. She's in that image at the Prairie Creek Library. Next slide. So some other community, as you can see, we do a monthly art kit distribution with WellMed. They provide services to seniors, 60 plus, all over the city of Dallas, but we see them at their site at Redbird. Every month we distribute about 200 art kits to seniors, and we see them every month. And then they also get on a art talk tour with us, which is virtual. So we do an art kit, and then the next week we get on and do a talk. And we see 200 seniors at meal service, and we see about 20 of them at the talk. And it's virtual, so it's awesome. The first one was hilarious because it was just trying to get everyone on the call, but now it's great. And yeah, so we've done a lot of art kits now in the community because the pandemic, a lot of Dallas ISD schools, they're not, we don't necessarily go into schools during school time, but if there's like organizations that are doing like after school programs out of school, that would be our territory. And a lot of schools aren't allowing people to come in. So a lot of our, after school programming has turned to, virtual or to-go kits, or this one on the bottom left, I dropped off a bunch of art kits and then we kind of virtually called in later, and we had like a video from a guest artist. So still trying to find ways to be out there. And you can, the one in the middle is us at the MLK Fest. So we do a lot of, we were at the Juneteenth Festival. So that is at the MLK Cultural Center. We do a lot of community festivals, and all of the community festivals in the past were like actual experiences. We'd have like artists or small workshops, walk-up workshops at our table, but now they're just like created as art kits and we pass them out. They all have their bilingual activities. So they're always in English and Spanish, and then they have the pictures. So if someone doesn't speak English or Spanish, they would be able to do the project just by looking at the pictures. And then they have all the materials needed to do whatever art project. So on the right, this was done in Bantan, an art kit distribution in Bantan. It was like a oil pastel and watercolor, mixing water and oil kind of art project. And so she's like holding up her art project that she made, because sometimes they would bring them back. And then so at the top right is one of our senior art kit distributions where they actually brought back their sculpture. I don't know if you can see, it says King of the Pond, and there's a little frog in there, but she made like a swamp sculpture from the month before when we had passed out art kits. So still having, a lot of there's still a lot of ways to connect with community members, even through the pandemic, which has been most of my work. So that's been really interesting, but really, I think it's still been really meaningful because, we've gotten to know a lot of folks, so, even just by like saying hello and dropping off an art kit, but no, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, these are some other things that were kind of done before the pandemic. On the left, you see a group, Vickery Trading Company, is a nonprofit organization that's in Vickery Meadow, and they are they're like a professional training program where they get women mostly that are refugees and immigrants that are using resources at the Northwest Community Center, that they may be seamstresses in their home country, right? So they basically empower, they basically are like, oh, you already do this, so we'll help you get professional training skills here in the United States. We'll help you with your client base, and we'll help you, figure out how to start a business here. And then it's like a mentorship program. So after a year, they kind of like cycle out, and a lot of them end up working, a lot of like at Neiman Marcus, or they'll start their own, kind of seamstress or tailoring business, and it's like their own network because they already kind of have their client base and they have each other. So it's really, really great. We've contracted them multiple times at the museum to make things like textile things for the exhibits, and we also use them as a community like group that we consult on textile objects that are in the galleries pre-pandemic. So this is kind of like one of those consulting sessions where they're kind of like testing out some of our textiles or tactile things in the gallery, but then they've also sewn many, like if we've had puppets or things that are part of gallery exhibits, and then they're part of that. So so these are like some more of like adult programs. And the two middle pictures are adult program, English language learning adult programs. So at the top, we do workshops with the Dallas Public Library. So all their branches have like adult ELL workshops, and we do a big field trip to the museum where they can bring all the different branches can come. And we do like, language and art kind of workshops. And then at the bottom is a new one we just started at the Northwest Community Center, same place where the Vickery Trading Company is. And so they do a lot of work with refugees and immigrants from all over, but specifically, I would say Southeast Asia, North Central Africa, South America. So really all over. They're very diverse. And we just did a storytelling workshop with them, and this is a post-pandemic. So as you can see, everyone's wearing a mask, but they have a really cool space. So everyone's really spread apart. And we had one of our visiting artists, one of our exhibiting artists at the DMA, Nida Bangash, who's from Pakistan, went and did a storytelling workshop with them. So that was really, really powerful because, you know, all of us speaking different languages, some of us didn't even write in any language. So I think like telling our story, and every single person wrote and illustrated their own story for this workshop. So that was, and they all read it out loud after, you know, so it was like very, very, very powerful. And then at the top right is, I think that's a DPL program too at the museum. That was when we would do our scavenger hunts. And then at the bottom right is a virtual program that we did. It was an after school program that we did with Heart House in Vickery Meadow, same neighborhood, right around the corner from Northwest Community Center. And those are mostly immigrant children as well. And we did a full virtual 6-month-long workshop series where we saw them. They have different age groups, but we saw each age group once a month for 2 hours. And we did art and emotional learning workshops. So a lot of them were making art, but it was a lot of physical, like, you know, doing other kinds of, you know, we baked things as art. You know, we made beautiful pancakes and stuff like that. So that was really, really fun too. And all of these programs we are planned and coordinated with myself and the person at that organization. So it's never like me creating something and being like, now do y'all want to do this? It's always like, how can we do something together? What are y'all interested in? And how can the pieces in our museum help with that program? So we call that responsive programming. Although I would say a lot of people in the museum do responsive programming. I wouldn't say that's exclusive to us. We can go to the next slide. And then so some other things that we do, we participated in a community in this health initiative by Carrie Mayweams, an artist from New York. She did this campaign in a bunch of different cities in the United States, really talking about how COVID had a larger impact on communities of color. And so she made a beautiful campaign. She photographed these pictures. We made them in English and in Spanish, and we created billboards in the areas of Dallas that had the highest COVID highest rate of COVID cases. And with that, we created, that was when you saw those masks that we were handing out. So we were handing out like COVID masks, PPE with art materials, like kind of sort of like the summer of the pandemic. So was kind of like our way, and you know, everything was outside. So it was kind of our way of being like, oh, and all the art kits had like information about like vaccinations and information about where you could get, you know, COVID or clinics that you could go to in that area. So it's kind of a way to use art to like get people excited about health. And in the middle is a zine that was mailed to our Creativettes. That's our veteran program. That's usually in person. For the last 1.5 years has been online, virtual. And we contract guest artists from, actually, that's pretty open. Creativettes is a great partner, and they're actually able to help fly artists from all over to do these workshops. But these are adult veterans who are interested in art, and we do these like deep dives into specific art media. So like one whole class will be about drawing, one whole class will be about sculpture or clay, and we do these like deep dives in a month. And so one time, you know, a guest artist will teach that workshop. The next time it'll be us talking about the DMA and being like, look at these pieces that, you know, also show these different techniques. And, you know, at the end of the year, if folks are really interested and they want to pursue art as, you know, in like a professional capacity, they can apply to the Creativettes Institute, which operates out of the Arts Institute in Chicago, and they get a professional certificate in a type of art that they want to do. So if it's like design or photography or whatever, and they go to this like semester-long intensive, live in the dorms, and then, you know, they kind of have this new skill or professional skill under their belt. So, and, you know, a network of also artist veterans. So it's really that program is very much about how, using art to tell your story and also using art to heal. And that picture of the scene I just wanted to include because it was by that guest artist was Anka Lafaz, and they're local to Dallas, but you know, made a whole zine for the veterans all about printmaking. And so, you know, we would ship them all these boxes, and you know, the printmaking one had 2 boxes, and they got all the materials. They're really, really nice materials. So that was like a really crazy program because I had never mailed so many like art boxes And we opened up that program, you know, since it was virtual, it wasn't just Dallas veterans, it was like North Texas, Central Texas veterans. So we had folks from like Houston, Killeen, you know, Fort Worth, all over kind of join that class. And that's like a still from one of our virtual sessions. And then at the top is our arts and healing class. That's with UNT students, college students, again, med students, and talking about, you know, how art could actually be, you know, healing, like a source of healing, and how, you know, some places art is even used as like doctors prescribe, like going to an art museum and looking at art to promote healing. So talking about how that could be used in practice by people in the medicine field. In the medical field. And that program in Dallas at the DMA is run by Bonnie Pittman, who used to be the director of the DMA. And she's kind of like this amazing arts person in Dallas. So she's written a lot about it as well. We can go to the next slide. So I think that's pretty much it from me. We very much, you know, at the museum, I did want to mention, you know, like the ways in which that we work with the community, I think is, you know, different than other museums that I've worked at, but, you know, and not perfect by any means, but I think when you talk about the word community, like you ask me, like, who's the DMA's community? And I'll like, you know, start talking about different partners that we work with. But if you ask like a curator at the DMA, they'll probably give you a different answer. And if you talk to like the director of adult programs, they'll give you a different answer. And if you talk to, so I think like really defining, you know, what that word means to all of our departments is also like a very important part of like my personal interest in this job. You know, because, you know, our mission for my position, right, is like that we amplify community voices, by increasing equitable access to the arts. And, you know, I believe that we do that, but I think, you know, for the DMA, right, it's very much how we can embed that community engagement work throughout all the departments so that it's like kind of a focus. And I think that's, you know, it's something that more and more, you know, as I ease into the job as well, more and more curators are like coming to me and being like, who can we involve in this? Like right now, one of our curators, Vivian Lee, we're going to be doing a big mural inside the museum with an artist, Tiffany Chung, who's Asian American, but she was raised in Houston. And she's actually coming to do a site visit next week, and she wants to visit Hart House and Northwest Community Center with us so that she can, you know, hear about some of these immigrant stories in Dallas. So I think like more of that work is what I hope to see happen. Yeah, and really how we can integrate, right, these community stories into like what's actually going on at the museum, which sometimes feels separate. And yeah, so this last picture is just what does community mean to me. When I was studying at the University of Texas at Austin, I was introduced by one of my professors to the Indigenous Cultures Institute in San Marcos, and I've been working with them for the past 7 years. And we do a lot of work with the Indigenous Cultures Institute, but mostly in terms of visual art and Indigenous pedagogy. So really talking about you know, how we can embed arts learning into learning all around. And they do a lot of work with like repatriation. They do a lot of work with like land acknowledgements. They're getting a whole center in San Marcos. So they do a lot of, and they do like professional development for educators. But you know, I work with them as sort of like a board member now, and in the past I would run their visual art. So I think a lot of my philosophy as an educator and just as like a community member comes from my experience with doing a lot of the work of researching my own identity, my own cultural ancestry, and what that means in service to my community. And that comes from the Indigenous Cultures Institute. So
great, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Paulina. Sorry, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo, but we're so grateful for you to be here today and to offer that information and insight. I'll just pull your attention to the chat because there's been some information related to some courses that are offered here that might be interesting to you. But I'm quite mindful of time. I don't know if we will be able to end on time today at all, but we'll move forward to another guest that we have with us today, someone who's worked at in collaboration with some folks at UT Arlington before, and who's here to discuss her work on fairy tales and activism. So linking into this sort of how activism can pull into the discussion of communities and art. So we have JC Hernandez here with us. JC, are you ready to share with us about your research and your current work? JC, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right, well, take it away. Just let me know when you'd like to advance the slides.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. I will call you about the investigations I have been doing at the time. So we use this to make a change in the community. Next one, please. Okay. First, I think that all know this, but just to remember, no, that the really importance of fairy tales is that they are originate from the society. No, the society invite to all people to create this kind of histories to can make a change for the children, to give them some advice from the society. No, the fairy tales really help, no, to the yes, to the people to have a formative, active role, no, that help the creation of belief and norms to that are reflected in changes in social orders that can help children to know what to do in some cases, or if this happens, you have to do this. No, this is the role, the real role of this kind of stories, and at the end, the effect that this tells is that the children know what to do in some situations, no, and the stories give another part, that is the creativity, and in the last years they found that these stories give also this kind of imagination, no, that can cultivate the imagination of the child. So with these ideas, no, that is really important, this kind of stories, that this kind of stories can change society, that is originate in the society to make this change. So we can you put the other one, please? So we make this kind of changes in the time. No, what happened? That really happened in these stories in one line of the time. No, what is why people change the versions? What do the people with these stories? No, they change the story. They change the images to show what is happening in the society. So we see all these changes, and we know, okay, in this time, they believe that that some of us the elements in the image means power, no, but then this meaning is changing. No, it's not erase the meaning, but it has been changed because the society changed. No, these fairy tales, as I mentioned, is origin in the society. So when the society change, the fairy tales change, and not only the way we make new fairy tales, no, this kind of fairy tales that is a folk fairy tales change too, no, change, and it begins to be a tool, no, that help people to know what is changing in her society. Can you move the other one, please? So we can see the difference, no, between the illustrations of tenure of Alice in Wonderland and a recent version of Alice, no, that can show us what is happened in each time, no, what we believe, what happened with Alice, no, what how we can see this character in this time. Can you show the next one, please? And this is in all parts of the society. No, we can in South America, for example, we can find this kind of images too, when we can see, for example, Snow White. No, what happened with the Snow White with his 7 children in this image, or an image of Paula Rego that show us that is Snow White, but she has an episode of violence, and this kind of use of these tales for the society is to show you what has happened in the society too. No, they use the remembers that we have of the story, that if we see, oh, this is a kind child, no, that is innocence, and show us the difference in this time, what has happened with this kind of characters. Can you show the next one, please? This is a different lecture of this kind of images too. This is more from Elena Sisto. It's a different see, no, of this kind of story that shows that everyone, no, can be in this time is no one too. So everyone can be, you know, why not? No one can be can have a different kind of characteristics, no? Why not, no? And we have a Kiki Smith, no, that she begins to have these tales to show what is happened in violence for the child, and everyone can be the wish, no, to break up this innocence in the children. Can you move to the other one, please? We have this one too, no, that is not a really happy end in this time, no, that that the story continues, that is not the same as we know at the end of the stories, no, that it's continue. No? What happened then? No, that's the style of Dina Goldstein to show what is happening in the actually with this story, no? If the story continues. Can you show the next one, please? And we have this one that is Anna Gasker. This is Wonder series that she shows different parts. It's not the character all the time, but only parts. No? That is, you continue the story, that you show that is someone, or you think that is someone in this case, that through this girl, no, that because of the shoes and the color, you know, that is Alice in Wonderland, but it's kind of violence, that you don't know what happened, but it's not okay, no. So she used this kind of a darker part of the stories that shows, what happened in the actually. So we think, what can we do with this? No, most of the people know about the stories. These stories has the quality that can change in the time, but also they continue teaching people things, that what happened here. So we proposed to the community to make an exhibition, for many stories on Mary Tales, and use these tales to the community read more about folklore. So we think about art as a tool and as a medium for the community to read more about these stories, and then to have her own point of view, to create her piece or their piece of art from this story. So we make an exhibition. This exhibition was in Holland and Spain for 21 cities, and the only things that we asked that was the exhibition was near for a bibliothèque, because we want to know if the community really read again this kind of stories. And the idea is that the people read the stories, see the artworks, and have their own ideas that what will happen, and the opportunity to show in the reality what will be or how will be the image. So we make this exhibition, and the idea of the exhibition was we make some pictures, that shows one part of the story that will be or was in the original story, because as the story we show changes in the time. So we use the original story, and some of the part of the original stories are lost. So we illustrate some of that parts. So the first reaction of the people was, I don't remember this. This not happened in the tale. So the action, the next action was, okay, show me the story, and I see that is true. So the people begin to read the stories again, and shows the difference, what happened in the time. And at the end, they create her own propose of the character in the actuality. Finally, we talk about the bibliothèques, if people take more of this story to go home to read there, and we found that it works, that really people and the children go see and make her own proposed of arts that were in the exposition too. So it was really nice to see that we can make that that change in the community. We can near that kind of tales, or that kind of stories that is part of the legacy. The exhibition calls the legacy of the fairy tales, and it was the idea, that the people see what how it changed and how it changed for them. You know, what is the difference? What happened here? And begin to make a value for that kind of tales, of that kind of stories that make part of their stories too. No, that give them a point of view of the reality, the point of view of how do they comport in society, and how they see the world. No, because the first images we have when we are child in this kind of stories is the fairy tales. No, so we make this idea of the world around these images and what happened there. So it was really important for the society. We have a good experience when we want to take off all the exhibition. They make us a letter that that asked us to take another year the exhibition through the different places for make this kind of activities for the child for children and for the more low people. So that's the next one, please.
Thank you so much, JC. What an interesting intersection, art and literature, and then those sort of how you presented it to the community, especially right next to a library, and how interesting it is to increase, you know, the engagement with those stories. So thank you so much for sharing that, and it's lovely to hear about your research as it unfolds. So we will. And if you want to get in touch with JC, we all have her her email on the screen again. But to move forward, I'd like to invite Professor Cedric Huckabee to describe his work, which has a local flavor, and to discuss his interest in community practices. So please take it away, Cedric.
Thank you, Leah. Thanks for inviting me. And it's not that long, but what I would have to say is just that most of the art I do, it starts out personal, and then it ends up public, those that end up public. So that's to start with that. So this is a wonderful opportunity. I consider this a wonderful opportunity because I've never done any kind of talk about the either the public work that I do or the social engagement work that I do. All the talks that I've ever done is about my studio practice or drawings, paintings, and then when and so there's another area that I like to talk about in this presentation, which is I think there's a place where social engagement and studio art can come together, and so let's talk about this in racism mural, street mural. If you can go to the next image. Oh, go back. Okay, so within this project, this is a street mural, and obviously this happened during the time during COVID, when all of the it was kind of around the time where during the George Floyd case, when all of the social unrest that was happening around that time. And so that was the temperature of the moment. And the thing that I found in social engagement work is that three things that generally I've seen continuously, and some of the speakers before spoke to this, every one of them. People like to be heard. People want opportunity, and they want to be a part of something, to be engaged, and to participate in something that matters. And so the social engagement work that I do, it deals with that, those things, hearing people, listening to people, talking with people, allowing people to be a part of something that hopefully that it matters, and giving people opportunity. And so this mural, and this, I want to talk about something else, but these presentations will lead up to something else, which is how different creatives can come together, and that coming together is a in how the wider the difference between the creatives, the more interesting the resolution when they come together. So the End Racism mural in the street there, it's a simple kind of thing, like this mural that engages the time. It was downtown Fort Worth that we did it, but that mural is a combination of a couple of artists, as my wife and myself, and some political figures. Miss Peoples, Deborah Peoples, who was running for the governor of Fort Worth, was very instrumental in this. And then the people of Fort Worth. People wanted the opportunity to say something, and people wanted the opportunity to do something. And as artists, I was able to sort of design something that could do that. This piece was interesting because it's not, like I'm the kind of artist who people are invited to my work because, rendering and form and being able to create space and this was like 3 words and not like original. It's not very original. You see End Racism signs in a number of other places. And this one influenced the guys over at TCU to do theirs as well. But the one place, the place of creativity, it was all set up in like the color of the statement, the placement, and the size and scale of the statement, and finally finding a way to let people be a part, let them add their own things. That's always a part of murals and public work, but this is different because the mural, you tell people what color to paint and where to paint it. He put your signature the way you want to put it and add your name to it, like with your style, like how you want to do it. And that little gesture, it drew all sorts of people out to be a part of this statement, those who wanted to be a part of the statement. And so it was pretty successful because now arts and politicians usually don't get along. That's the interesting thing, is that can we find ways for different creatives? Because sometimes I think politicians can be pretty creative if you watch them, how they go. But if you can find a place where those different people can come together, what made the success of that project was that as a politician, Mrs. People, she was very much able to gather attention and to get people, to notify people. Now, we reached out to more than her. We reached out to political parties across different political parties, but she was the one who basically more than us. The whole idea started with her to begin with, but she was willing to work with us in other projects. Can you next? I won't stay on this, so we can go to the next thing. So this house here, this is 2 versions of it. You see it earlier, and you see it as we've worked on it more. And it's also in the Polytechnic Heights community that was mentioned earlier. And like I said before, most of the projects I do, they start out personal and they end up public. So this is my grandmother's old house. And I've had a lot of experience over at this house. I used to go to school 2 blocks away from here at SS Dillo in elementary school. And I would walk over to my grandmother's house after school, and that's where I would stay until my parents picked me up. And when I first started going to college too, I started college at Texas Wesleyan. My first 2 years of college was spent there, and that's not that far from this house as well. But this house is a place. The house is a project that's going to be called Kinfolk House. And that term kinfolk is, well, you all know the term, but we thought it was a wonderful term to where it's something that can mean like, people who you share a personal relationship with as kinfolk, but it's about turning the whole world into kinfolk. And so the house is what I would call like a collaboration place for creatives. It's where we want to try to take creatives that have rather different disciplines, and let's do something together. And those who want to engage the community and come together and like jive together to make something, that house is the place to do it. And it should be able, the ideal is to stir up those creative energies and have, like, let's say a painter and a fashion designer and some other type of creative, a poet, or maybe it's a potter and a gardener and a singer come together and then engage the community in different ways and set up workshops and that's what that is for in this community. I have I've told you my personal connection to it, but it is about like honoring this grandmother neither one of my grandmothers really considered themselves artists. Obviously I'm an artist, but I considered her to be a creative because she was somehow able to make people who were very different feel comfortable all in the same space. And however which way you can do that, I don't know about you, but I consider it pretty creative. So this is Kinfolk House, and I would consider it to be, sorry y'all, I would consider it to be a kind of social engagement project because it's set up to engage the public. Next. We also did murals around the time of the elections. We did murals all across the area. And the mural process was a wonderful way, the same way the street process was set up to engage the public. You can see the people signing and writing statements on one of the mural about voting. And we didn't want it to be like geared toward one party or another. The whole idea here was to really encourage people to vote, to come out and vote. And I loved being able to partner with Carlos. It's hard to see him down at the bottom, but that's Carlos Don Juan with the big green guy with the vote equals voice. And then the head there that you see painted on the side of the building, that's Charles Gray. He's one of our students at UTA right now. And that head was just wonderful. Like they liked it so much. I think they've paid Charles to be able to use that little head in a number of different places and spaces and for different things. But the whole idea was trying to find ways as artists. I connected with other artists I knew, with Carlos and with a number of artists around the community, and see, coming from the arts standpoint, if we could help inspire and push the vote through, just art. Okay, next. So, could you play that video? So this was a project I did years ago, um, about the community of Highland Hills. That's the community I grew up in Fort Worth. And the project was about listening to people and listening to the people of that community, and really just like with no kind of preconceived thing, what's on their mind. Because around that time, it was around the time of the protest on Wall Street. And every time I would watch the different news channels, people were constantly saying what was going on with people. And I thought, I wonder what if I went around and asked people what would be some of the things they would say that's going on with them. And so I went around my community because I felt like that was a community that was being overlooked. And I started on drawings of people, and I would ask people, can I draw you? It would take, the drawings would take anywhere between like 20 minutes and an hour. And some people could not, like they didn't have that time right away, but I could get their number and call them and coordinate a time to come draw them, or coordinate a time where they come over and be drawn. Or some people could do it. I think not, like, it's community, but in the oddest, in an odd kind of way, because some of the people that drew there might have been like over at the house of the friend at that time, and I drew that person and their friend. So, but this was the voice of the community at that time, and I learned a lot in this project. One of the things I learned was how to listen to people. And another thing I learned that I'm still working out is that there's a listening that you can do, and people like and need to be heard. But then there is also a time that you can respond to people. And that's, you take off the studio artist hat and you put on the either social engagement hat, or you put on the activist hat, or whatever it is, and you can respond to what is heard. Okay, but what I want to show you next, and I'm almost to the end here, which is, what does it look like, what does it feel like to be on the inside? If you were there while I was drawing people, here's another project I did exactly like the 99%, but in a hospital. And I wanted to see how contemporary art and could work in a hospital and maybe deal with healing. And so it was the same drawing practice, but I'm searching through drawing. But this is what that project feels like if you were there with me, because we had a videographer there, and I did that thing that I want to do in the house. I invited a singer to sit with me and listen to the people when they were talking, and to see if that singer could come up with a song, either something that they made or song that they knew to fit this person's situation, to fit something that they were telling us. And we wanted to create like this thing. And remember, that's what I said the house was about. So let me first show you this, drawing this gentleman in the hospital. So Mr. Williams, he said this one thing, and you're gonna find this through I found it through all of the people, stuff I've talked to. He said, I come from a family where people like to laugh, and that's good medicine. And we all know that, but when you practice it, you'll find out the truth.
Cedric, can you unmute yourself? I had to mute you because of the echo, so sorry, I can't do it.
No problem. I got it. So that's what it's like to be there drawing on somebody, and they're talking to you, and you're navigating between a person who's talking and moving, and at the same time you're moving, you're trying to draw them. But this is what it sounded like when that became we bring in that element, that odd element of the singer who's there listening. And this was another couple that I was drawing there, and she was there too. And this is how that went. Could you play this one? So just give a little context there. So what happened is they brought me in as a guest artist. I was like a resident artist in the hospital, and I drew patients, I drew doctors, I drew workers in the hospital. And during some of the times of the sittings, the singer came, and sometime the videographer came, and we had this presentation that we did to the hospital. And I hung the pieces in the hospital for a certain period of time. Excuse me, we got some people coming in there. And so what was the result of this? Like, what was I trying to do and accomplish? Well, one of the things is I was trying to accomplish allowing studio art and social engagement to come closer together. And what I hoped was that by listening carefully to different people, that I would find avenues for other projects and to push and pull. The best thing we got accomplished, we put the pieces out, and there was this discovery, and it's not a real discovery, but it was a help and an encouragement especially to the young doctors, in this. What I was able, as I listened one person at a time, and I'm talking to patients and I'm talking to doctors and I talked to people who worked in the lunchroom, what I found, and I'm sure everybody sort of knows this, but it's good, I think, through the writings and through the presentation and through it all, there was this encouragement that basically caring aids healing. So if we could have two hospitals side by side, and one of them could diagnose the patients, they could get them, they were the patient here, and they could get them the treatment they needed, this, and this other one did the same thing, but they cared a little more about the people, that this institution would not only increase the healing that happens in that hospital, it would increase probably in amount, and it would probably increase in its ability or its effects over the people. And so just this encouragement, because one of the, I could go on a long path, but we have a limited amount of time here. But I looked while I was there at the situation where the young doctors, when they're in study, they're tested when they start when they start into a kind of apprenticeship into the hospitals to learn about, being doctors. They give a test to them, and then when they leave, they test them again. And one of the things that the test showed was that many of them come into the practice with a large amount of empathy. Like, they care about people, and that's one of the reasons why they want to be doctors and want to be nurses or whatever. But as they go through the program and they have to go through all of the rigors of that, they lose something. And so this project was a real encouragement and an acknowledgement of that, and an encouragement to basically, simply put, keep caring. So the end of my, I guess I'll just end by saying this, is that when I found in dealing with people, and a lot of these things, like I said, they start out personal. That project started at the Amon Carter Museum, believe it or not, and it ended at this hospital in Philadelphia. But people, I found in dealing with people that it's good in our projects to make space to listen, makes opportunity for people to be, opportunity. People need opportunity, and people like to do something. They like to be engaged and with something that matters. That's it.
Thank you so much, Cedric, and I hope you'll go back and look through the chat, because your work has impacted a lot of your colleagues, and they mentioned a few things to you, so hopefully you'll see that. So I think, given time, Billy and I have decided to just not speak about our work and head straight into a couple of questions that we wanted to. I'm going to pull the this other section up. So we had a couple of questions that we wanted to address to the whole group, and now I'm not figuring out how to get back. How do I get back? Okay.
I've got questions up too. I can go ahead and start.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and ask the first question of the panelists, I'll navigate to them so people can read them.
So first question for the group is, if you were going to put your guiding ethical principle for engaging with communities or as an activist in the arts into a few words, like what would fit on a bumper sticker, what would your principle say?
And I had first dibs on seeing this question because Billy sent it to me first. So I'm going to just say really quickly, I'm going to echo what everyone said. My bumper sticker says, listen first and listen more. That's what my bumper sticker says.
Ditto.
Yeah, I can add. I'll add to that listening idea. To look them in the eyes. like really, and we can't do it, you know, on Teams, that making eye contact, but just like looking people in the eyes and letting them know, you know, they have your full attention in that moment.
Yeah, Dennis or Paulina or JC, any thoughts on what you might distill down as your approach? I'm not sure if they've been able to stay with us.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something and make it short because I'm so wordy. But I think it would just have to be about, you know, really like reaching, right? Figuring out, you know, what your roots are and reaching from there to be authentic.
Thank you.
You know, I think actually I would say look, listen, and respond.
Thank you. Yeah, and for the sake of time, we have another question. So what gaps do you see in community engagement? What are we missing, and where do we need to prioritize our efforts? You know, where have we missed the boat a little bit? And we have a lot of students on still with us, and what might they seek to fill, you know, in the future?
Okay. Can I speak first?
For sure, please.
Okay. I think that there is so much room that is available for socially engaged artists. But I don't think that we, like here in the Metroplex, there's a lot of room for that to happen. And I think it would look a lot of different ways depending on what direction you're coming from. Like we can see that just today with the presentations. One of the things I haven't seen more, and this is why I've been pushing in the directions that I've been pushing, is like a lot of times socially engaged artists, their art ends up like not seeming like art as much. You know, and I think there's so much room for people to both like still be able to do their thing, but engage with people in the process. And I would love to see more of that, like people personalizing social engagement. So that's my 2 cents.
Billy, any thoughts on gaps or what needs to come next?
Well, I echo Cedric's observation that a social engagement art can sometimes seem like the art is getting lost and you're ending up with something different in its meaning. I mean, I think there's a lot of gaps. We're 30 minutes over, so it's hard to list all of that. But I mean, a key one is just like inclusiveness and access. Artists working in places that are hard to get to, hard to interact with the artists. How do you take art away from the need for institutional support and still have it be, considered legitimate by other artists and by the people who are engaging with it?
Absolutely. Well, we apologize for going over. I think we've covered an amazing array of work, right? And engagement with communities. And so we'll just encourage everyone, instead of opening up questions right now. I feel like my computer is about to fall over. It's kind of dealing with itself right now. But to get in touch, if you heard something today that really sparked your interest and you think, man, I really want to do something like that, I hope you will reach out. We have contact information available here. If you're not able to write it down, you can always just get in touch with the one of us that you know, and we can get you in touch with the other person you're looking for. Because as so many people said, Cedric mentioned it, lots of people said, it's about collaboration. And so you out there who have, your own experiences, your own interests, and your own communities, we need more collaborators. I think that's one of the things that will always be a missing link is who's the next collaborator, right? Like who's the next person I'm going to work with and what's the next community to work with. We'll end there. Thank you so much for those of you who have stayed through, and please do again reach out. I'll remain a little bit longer in the chat just in case anyone has any questions in particular, but this recording will be available. It'll be uploaded soon to the Art and Architecture YouTube channel if you need to go back and review any of it. So thank you so much. Virtual applause to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for being here and offering your information, your insights, and your sort of personal considerations of your art and research. So with that, please have a lovely Friday afternoon / evening and be safe over the weekend. And we look forward to hearing from those of you who are interested in this sort of work. So
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, co-organizer Billy, and thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you, Leah, master of emails and organization.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. And we've got a lot of thank yous coming through the chat. So thank you, everybody.